one. My guest today is legendary Bob Burg. Bob, your book has outlived 2 recessions, 3 presidential cycles, and the entire first act of the internet. We now live in a world where the first sales touch is pattern matched by an AI agent. I want to know which of your 5 laws is more fragile now more than ever, and which one is more powerful than ever.
Yeah, I think because they're based on principles, universal principles, which, as you know, um, work across the board and withstand the test of time. Now strategies change, techniques change, tactics change, of course, and that's fine. But because these are based on universal laws and principles, none of which John David Mann, my awesome co-author, none of which we made up or invented, of course, because they're universal laws and principles. And so, yeah, I don't think that I think that in today's day, especially today's day of AI, um, none of them have lessened. I think they've, if anything, they've become more important because it's that personal touch that makes the difference. In law number 3, the law of influence, the one of the mentors in the story, Sam, he tells Joe, the protege, that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. Well, people don't know, like, and trust technology. They know, like, and trust people. Now, people can use the technology to further develop that, absolutely. Use it, in order to leverage that. But it's the people. All business still. There's B2B and B2C. It's really H to H. It's human to human, and I think that's the difference maker. By the way, I do need to congratulate you on your newest book. This is very, very exciting. And you wrote that with, of course, another legend. You're a legend, but you wrote it with another legend, Jay Abraham. So I'm just really looking forward to this, and congratulations. May it serve millions of people.
Thank you. And what for listeners, if they were living under a rock, what are the other 4 principles?
So the 5%, and basically the underlying premise of the Go Giver, of every book in the series, but starting with the first one, the original one, the premise is simply that shifting your focus, and I think it all begins there, shifting your focus from getting to giving. Now, when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any kind of way out there, woo woo, magical, mystical reason. Oh, just give and good things will happen. No, not at all. It's much more rational than that. It's much more logical than that. When you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, discovering their needs, their wants, their desires, when you can make it not about yourself, but rather helping them overcome and solve their problems and challenges. When you make it not about you, but rather moving them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They want to be in relationship with you, right? They want to do business with you if they need what you have, or what have you. But really, they want to tell the world about you. They want to be your, what we call, personal walking ambassador. So that's really where it starts. The 5 laws are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity.
Powerful and timeless. Now, The Go Giver sold 1 million copies in 30 languages, guys. 30 languages. What is the one thing even your fans still misread?
Oh, I think there are a few. I think there are a few things that people in general, um, here's the thing. It's a great question that you ask. We all see the world from our own set of beliefs, right? Our own unconscious beliefs, our what I like to call our unconscious operating system. And so when they hear a term like the go-giver, they kind of give their own definition to it and their own expectations, even sometimes when after reading the book. So, for example, some people might think, well, being a go-giver, does that mean you're giving away your stuff for free? Is that what it's about? Well, absolutely not. I mean, there's a time and place for everything, of course, in terms of a marketing strategy, but no, it's about bringing more in value to that person or company or what have you, okay, so that it's bringing such extraordinary value, such a wonderful value-based experience that they feel as though they're receiving more than what they paid for, which they did, okay, while you make a very healthy profit. In fact, go-givers tend to be at the higher end of the pricing scale because go-givers sell on high value, not low price, right? When you sell on low price, you're a commodity. When you sell on high value, you're a resource. So I think that's one thing. Another is, well, does being a go-giver mean you're going to be taken advantage of? Because well, it must mean you just give yourself away or allow it. No, there's absolutely no natural dichotomy between being a go-giver and being someone who or I should say there's no natural division or dichotomy between being a go-giver and someone who attains the results they want. If someone finds themselves being taken advantage of, and I'm talking about as a pattern, I mean, at some time or another, we're all going to get taken advantage of somewhere unless we never leave the house, right? But I'm talking about someone who it's their pattern of this happening. And I say if you find yourself in a pattern of being taken advantage of, it's not because you're a giving person, it's not because you're a nice person, it's because you're doing things in a certain way that's creating the context or the environment for you to be taken advantage of. And if
I
that's the case, then yeah.
I was thinking about this and discussing this yesterday. We had David Allen from JTD here on the show, and we
Ah,
were
another legend. Wow.
yes, and we were
Yeah.
asking ourselves what leads people to burnout and teams to burnout. Now, in the context of giving, do you think it is giving too much or is it actually giving the wrong thing? Let me give you an example. Uh, I see mothers and fathers giving all they got and more all the time and not burning out because they're giving the right thing just in a never ending all in way, and they're getting a lot back by giving this. And then I see people working in the wrong environment for just 6 hours a day and they burn out. They're not giving everything, but they're giving
Mhm.
too much of something.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to what you said at the beginning of that, which I thought was brilliant. And it's not that they're giving too much as they are giving inappropriately, or
Mm.
they're giving in such a way, and this is key, that is not congruent with their values. Okay. So that mother and father you're talking about are doing things that are totally congruent with their values. And so they receive great joy by doing certain things that are good, obviously, for their children. Okay. If you are in a business where you have a product or service that you totally believe in, it brings exceptional value to the lives of people, and you're able to help people with that, and you're earning a great income as a result. No, you're not going to feel burnt out. You're going to feel great while you're doing it. It's all congruent with your value system. On the other hand, there are times and people will say, well, Bob, I'm giving and giving, and people just aren't, giving business to me and so forth. And whenever this happens, and we do what would you call it? When trying to think of the right word, a doctor does a
A diagnosis?
diagnosis. Thank you. We're doing a diagnosis. It always comes down to one of two things. Now, the first one is true about 95% of the time. The other one, 5%. Here's what they are. The first one is that, yes, they're giving value, but not in a way the other person sees it as being of value. They're giving
Mm.
value in a way they feel it's
Mm.
of value. So let's talk a little bit about that first, if we may. When we talk about the law of value, the first law, the foundational law, it would give more in value than you take in payment. Again, that doesn't mean you don't make a profit. Okay. It means you understand first the difference between price and value.
Mhm.
Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount, or it's a euro amount, or it's a pound amount, or it's a peso amount, whatever it happens to be. So, okay, that's price. It's finite. It is what it is.
Mhm.
Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another person that they will, in this case, willingly exchange their money for it and be ecstatic that they did while you make a very healthy profit. Okay. Now, when this happens, of course, there are two. In any market-based exchange, there should always be two profits: the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. But here's the key: value is always in the eyes of the beholder. It's not what we believe is of value. It's not what we believe they should believe is of value. It's what they believe is of value. So this person who believes that they're giving all this great value, maybe they're, making introductions, or they're sending information, or they're doing this, or they're doing that, or they finally do have a sales conversation, and instead of asking the right questions, they're assuming they know what this other person would, right, whatever it happens to be, right? So they're saying, "Oh, I'm giving all this value." Well, you're giving it as you understand it, according to your belief system, not theirs. That's 95% of the time. That's the case. So it has to go back to discovering what the other person values and give that to them. The other 5% is it's more a mental thing. And that's what we talk about in law number 5, the law of receptivity. The law of receptivity says the key to effective giving is to stay open
Mm.
to receiving. Well, this means nothing more than understanding that, sure, you breathe out, you've also got to breathe in. It's not one or the other. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving, you breathe in, which is receiving. And giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're
Help us
simply two.
help us out with this, because everybody listening right now is these people listening are alpha people. The people, who create something out of nothing, entrepreneurs, and they always
Mm-hmm.
see the next task, and
Yeah.
they rarely feel the accomplishment, the gratitude for what they just completed or achieved or gave. um, how can we, if we are one of these types, and receiving comes not naturally to us, how can
Right.
we open up to receiving? Is there a practice, a process?
Yeah, this is oh boy, what a wonderful question. And this is so very important, because it is such a stumbling block, especially for entrepreneurs. And like you, I love entrepreneurs, right? They're my people, right? I'm such a huge believer in entrepreneurship. It's the engine that drives everything good, right? And so but a lot of times, because they're so good at what they do, they're such wonderful practitioners, and they have such a heart for what they're doing, they buy into that, again, that what John David Mann and I call that treacherous dichotomy, the false dilemma, the unnecessary use of the word or. You're either doing great work for others, or you're making a lot of money. No, it's both. Money is simply an echo of value, right? It's the thunder to value's lightning. But that's not the message that we get from the world around us. Okay. Almost from birth, from whether it's upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture, the internet. Certainly, there's this anti-prosperity message coming in all the time about money, about abundance, about business, about, and we can say, well, we don't buy into that, except for, you know what? Sure, we do. because we hear it all the time, and in so many things, and it bypasses the conscious mind and goes into the unconscious, which of course is even more dangerous because we don't know that we don't know that. So first is to make a study of prosperity. There are people out there who do wonderful work. Randy Gage, who has a new book coming out tomorrow on prosperity. Somebody like David Nagel, the late Bob Proctor. Sharon Lechter does a lot of great work. Lisa Peterson, who I think you might know, I'm not
Yes.
sure, but yeah, she does great work with this. There's a number of people, Derek Kinney, Ellen Rogan, a lot of people, and they have these great blogs and they have videos and they do seminars. Well, here's the thing: if you follow their teaching, 90% of what they teach is the mental game. It's how to get past the,
That's
excuse
the
me,
hard part.
pardon
Yeah.
me. It's how
Yeah.
to get past that, right, and how to navigate past that so you're not blocking your own success. Now, so let's take one. So I would say look up those people, subscribe to their information, and read their books and watch their videos. Now, one thing you can do is first the first step is understanding that this may be a block for you. So if someone's watching this, and I'm not saying it is, but if someone's watching and they say, "Yeah, this is a block for me," I love the giving of value part. I do find it hard to recognize my value and to receive graciously and so forth. That's a challenge. Well, you know what? Congratulations for recognizing it. Because until we recognize a problem, we can't overcome it. So that's the first step, recognizing it. Then start to make a study of it, and that's good. Okay, now here's the thing: let yourself build on your small successes. So for example, someone holds a door open for you. Okay, instead of saying, "Oh, no, 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 after you," go through and say, "Thank you, I appreciate that."
Mm.
Or if you're at a store or a shop and you're about to grab the coffee and someone who already has it and is pouring on says, starts to pour yours, just thank them. Thank you. It's very kind. Someone gives you a compliment. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Allow that to happen. If you have a small amount of money coming in, really be appreciative of it, right? Say thank you. Ken Honda from Japan wrote a wonderful book about the energy of money. It's really not the energy of money; it's the energy we give, right, to money. And so he said in Japanese, the way to say thank you is arigato. And so he says, just say arigato. After every time you bring something in. And my business partner, Kathy, and I do that. Whenever we see it doesn't matter how much the amount is. When we see something's gone into the account, we always, we instrument arigato, right? It's just a way of reminding us to live in the prosperity, to acknowledge the prosperity and embrace it. And then as you get bigger checks and bigger amounts, arigato, arigato, just keep going. But get conscious of it. And this is key, if you find yourself not accepting something. By the way, you don't have to accept everything that comes your way. If it's not congruent with your values, you don't have to receive it. But assuming it's something that you would like, and for whatever reason you find yourself not being open to it, just don't judge yourself. Just ask yourself the question, why? Notice, as Michael A. Singer says in his great books, just notice. Okay. Now ask yourself why. Why did I not do that? Why did I kind of sabotage that sales conversation, or why did I do this and that? And then just again, no judgment, just notice and ask yourself the question, check your premise and figure it out. So I think all those things we can do that help us to more effectively deal with that issue.
How does a day in prospecting look like for Bob Burg?
A day in is prospecting for the business.
Yeah.
So at 68 years old, I'm pretty much semi-retired. So at this point, so I don't get on the road. I don't speak anymore in terms of traveling by air. I only do, excuse me, virtual keynotes and programs in Florida, and those at this point just kind of come. But prospecting was a very big part of my life for many, 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 many years. And so the big thing is like anything else, you decide who it is that you are, who's your market. I call it going through the marketing bridge. Do they need it? Do they want it? Can they afford it? And if you put them through that, you can have a pretty good idea. Now, sometimes depending upon what you sell, it's not a matter of need. It's not a product that someone needs, but it's something that somebody wants. Sometimes, though, they might need it, but they don't want it. And I'm not talking about just the individual, but the marketplace itself. Now, if that's the case, you have a choice. You either go about building that market, which takes time, money, energy, a lot of no's, which is okay. That's part of it. And then until you finally break, or you say, nah, you know what? I think I'm going to instead prospect those who both need it and want it and can afford it. So again, and then there's no judgment either way. There's a time and place for everything. Sometimes it's well worth it to open up a new market, and other times it's not. And I've had experience with both. So, but the prospecting when I first started, let's say when I first got into speaking years and years and years ago, and back then, back then, I decided on a couple different niche markets. One of them was independent insurance agents because the program I had at the time, that was something that I knew that they needed. They would want it if I approached it correctly, and I knew they could afford it. And so there were at the time two really big voluminous tomes that he had. Now they're online, of course, but back when I started, one was the National Trade Professional Association Directory, and one was the State and Regional Association Directory. I decided the best thing to do was work a horizontal market where I would start with all the different states, the 50 states, and I would just call and I would have once I had the decision maker, I'd give the opening statement in terms of discovering if there was interest. If there was, then it went to the next stage, and then it was the send, it was the follow-up, it was the, all the different things you did. And I did that when I first started, and that's how I built my business for a couple of years. Now, once I would get an engagement, then you could leverage that for, and get referrals and so forth. What I would do is I would publish. Back then, there were magazines that were actually not online because there was no online back then. And so I would write for magazines and I would position myself that way. So then when I called, I could ask them if they happened to see the article in, Independent Insurance Agent Today or whatever it was called, and so forth. Then, of course, a few years later, I wrote my first book, used that as a positioning tool. So that would be, but here's the thing, okay? You could, if you saw me at, let's say, 10 o'clock in the morning on any of those days, you'd see me doing the same thing. I was more consistent than I necessarily was, perfect. You know what I'm saying? Because I know I wasn't perfect, but I know I was consistent.
Yes,
yes, exactly.
Yes. And now your book is exceptional. So 30 languages, over 1 million copies sold. This is exceptional. And many of us, we are either writing a book right now or we are just publishing it. Like mine came out yesterday. You just mentioned a few colleagues that are publishing also this week. What would you tell? What would you share with us in terms of repeatable processes? What can we do to have a successful book launch?
Yeah. So I think there's two parts to it. I think there's the launch, but then there's the steadiness. So remember, the Go Giver came out at the very, very end of 2007. So we say 2008 because that's when it hit the bookshelf. So what is that? Almost 20 years now, 18, whatever. I'm still doing interviews just about every day on the Go Giver. Right. And whenever there have been other books that have come out in the series and others that I've had, I do interviews on those. So for me, getting on podcasts is a good way to do it. Okay. But there's also, you can be doing YouTube videos where you just basically answer questions that people would have. You can do lots of talks. There's so many things to do. I mean, we could go through a whole thing just as how to
Book
do that.
clubs.
But here, book clubs, absolutely. Although be careful though with that, because there's a scam going around now that's been around for about the last year, where you get contacted by somebody who says they're with a book club that they're doing. It's like the same letter, it's the same email, it's from all of them, and they end up charging you to do it, but there's no book
Mm.
club.
Oh,
There's no book club. I had heard about that from another author who fell for it, and I had been getting those and just, having these conversations back and forth. And but so be careful. But yeah, book clubs, absolutely. There are books like John Kremer's book, Kremer, John Kremer, 1001 Ways to Market Your Book. He
mm.
wrote this years ago, but he updates it, I think, every couple of years. And he has a free newsletter. So I would subscribe to that. Also, there's a woman by the name of Honoree, Honoree Quarter, Corder, who has an weekly email on monetizing your book. Where basically it's about marketing. She has a book called "You Must Market Your Book." So there's a lot of good um, resources out there. But I would say this: to choose the 3 or 4 or 5 things that you know you're going to do, and again, do them consistently. Now, as far as the launch, there are people who specialize in putting launches together, and I think that's fantastic. But I think the big thing is you want to have a list of people that you've been developing before you ask people to be part of your launch. Because the know, like, and trust is so
Back to
important. That was a
giving,
big
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a big part of why the Go Giver got off to a fast start. John and I both had built relationships over years with people who they knew, liked, and trusted us, and so they were right. But again, so launch is important, but I don't think it's the end all be all. The biggest thing is um, I think the biggest thing is the consistency to whether it's podcasting, being a guest on podcast or having your own podcast, doing those 3-minute videos on YouTube and building up an audience, whether it's guest posting on other people's blogs, speaking first locally and then all over, and that's a big thing. But building a speaking business, and so whatever it is you're going to do, so, sometimes depending upon what you do, also you can do joint ventures with an advertiser who would like to have then you have, but a lot of times too, your book is utilized not because you care about selling a whole lot of them, but because that positions you as an expert to your niche. My first book, and it ended up selling a whole lot of copies, but it started out, I was using it just as a positioning tool. So when I called those insurance agents, I would ask if they'd read the book, and if they hadn't, and the title was Endless Referrals. Network your everyday contacts in the sales. This was in the 90s. Well, that's exactly what they wanted, endless referrals, right? So they wanted the book, and I sent them the book. If they loved the book, they had me in to speak. If they didn't like it, they didn't have me in to speak. But it was a great positioning tool. The fact that it ended up selling a lot over the year, great. That was gravy on the potatoes, but that wasn't even the reason for it. So it really depends what a person is utilizing their book for. By the way, when we get through with the interview, will you send me a paragraph or two on your book so I can promote it on LinkedIn?
I
We'll get
will.
some just came. Yeah, we got to get some people on there going to getting the book.
I will. I practice receiving right now, and I will. By the way, now everybody heard endless referrals. Oh my God, I need this. Endless referrals. Bob, how do I get to endless referrals? How do I get more
Yeah.
referable? And is there a process, a method?
Yeah, I mean, it begins with giving value to others first. It means that when you're in a conversation with someone, it's asking them about their business, asking them about themselves, not in a way that you're trying to get their business, but just in a way that you're building a relationship. It's asking a person, how did you get started in the so and so business?
Mm,
What do you enjoy most about what you do? It's asking what I call the one key question:
mm,
how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good prospective client for you?
mhm,
So you ask these questions, and what are you doing? You're attracting that person to you. They want to know more about you. They want to have everything because they see you as someone who, again,
Mm.
assuming you're doing this authentically, they see you as someone who looks to add value to their life. You can then follow up, follow through the personal handwritten note, or you can connect with them on LinkedIn or wherever you do that and start the relationship. Ask yourself, how can I, refer them to other people? How can I help them in their business? And so that's really how it starts.
And some questions are more powerful than others, right? What's most alive for you right now? How can I know that that person is a perfect client? What are
Exactly.
you building right now, and what's hard? These are
Yeah.
some questions hit harder than others, right? So, is it getting better at um, asking?
Well, it always is, I think. And especially when you get to the point of the sales conversation, the questions you ask are going to determine whether this person is going to end up doing business with you. But I think when you first meet someone, yeah, I mean, when you ask questions that cause this person to really feel good about themselves, that's what it comes down to. Are you able to make another person feel good about themselves? If when I first started in sales, and this is, I guess, over 40 years ago now. I was on the phone a lot, okay, and I was prospecting on the phone. I was building relationships on the phone. I was closing sales on the phone. One of the things I learned very early is nobody ever hung up the phone on me while they were talking.
That's true.
Right? Now, if I'm talking about myself and my product and how long we've been in business and how much, right? No, they're not interested. Right? Exactly. Right. But if I'm asking about them and they're talking about themselves, they're totally engaged.
Totally.
Right.
Yes.
And it's the same in person. It's the same on Zoom. If you've ever been in a conversation with someone who let you do practically all the talking, didn't you kind of come away from that conversation saying to yourself, wow, what a fascinating conversationalist that person is?
Yes.
It's as simple as that. And again, as long as it comes from a true, authentic caring about being able to add value to another person's life, which is what sales is all about. It's what entrepreneurship
Mm.
is all about. That's what entrepreneurs do, right? Then you're 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
I love this. Bob Burg, everyone, the legend. Bob, where should people go to your programs, to your certifications, to your website to find out more about you?
Yeah, everything's at burg.com. And while they're there, they can also subscribe to my daily impact on Substack.
I will immediately. Thank you so much, Bob, for being here, sharing
Oh,
so generously, and for being the leader of your community. You have a great Facebook group where I'm now also an ambassador and a member. This is beautiful. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Keep rolling.